So you've taken the time, you've designed, you've developed, you put hours, you put dollars into creating your training program. And now it's time that we need to start rolling. Let me actually even add into that. We've also piloted the program. So we now come to the point where we need to go and start launching this. We want to launch it across our organization, right? And how do we ensure success? And that's what we're going to look at today, is the whole train the trainer process, so that we can take that time and energy and, all the assets that went into building a successful, building a program. Now, how do we get it so it can be rolled out across multiple locations, across multiple facilitators, so it's a successful program? And that, my friends, that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's get into this. All right, so thank you everyone for joining me on this Friday. Happy Lunch and Learn. We are, coming in from Boston like usual. This time, though, we do have a little bit of a special guest. It's me with COVID, fun stuff here. But to be honest, I couldn't figure out how to reschedule an event, and I didn't want to put the time and energy. So we're just going to go through it. So I did, put on a nice shirt. I ironed because I thought it would make me probably look a little better than I feel. But we're going to keep this short and sweet, but cover this really essential topic. So thank you for joining again. I already see people are chiming in the chat. So questions or thoughts as this goes along, please put them up in the chat. And as usual, I'm pointing at the chat like you guys can see where my finger's going. But that's my own issue. So Liz, thank you for joining. Cheryl, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Same with you, Steve. So thank you, everyone. We're going to jump into the whole train the trainer process, because I think it's a big piece that, in a lot of ways, due to budgetary expenses, time frames, a lot of times it gets skipped over. And I think it's something we really should circle back and really consider, is this something that we need to be doing more and more often? But what we're going to look at today is simple enough. If you guys sat through enough of these, I like definitions. I like to put terminology to things. So we're going to talk about what it is, who's it for. We're going to go through the process, what I think is a very successful way to do it, and then things to consider. And then we'll wrap it up. So again, with these, I like to try to keep them 25, 30 minutes. Sometimes they go longer, depending. But that's kind of, the sweet spot. As you're going through this, please let me know again in the comments any questions. All right, so if we jump off, let's look at the definition. So what is a train the trainer program? Put it, and I use my words. So in the simplest form, it's a model of training or a framework of training that's we're looking to develop the knowledge or skills of the people who are going to be facilitating our training program. Right, so it's not that we're, it's got a train the trainer program has its own objectives, right? And the objectives are not tied to the training program, but the training program is part of the objective. I know it's kind of circular, but we want to get our facilitators to a place where they can successfully lead the program that we're going to be doing. So that's the idea. The train the trainer program is, it's a model or a framework of training to get the people who will be facilitating our programs ready to successfully lead those programs. All right. So after that, if we dig in, who's the audience? And for me, there's two audiences, two key ones. And before I do this, I always think of Chuck Woolery, right? We'll be back in 2 and 2. I don't know. Again, maybe it's COVID brain today. But so first audience, experienced trainers, right? People who have done the facilitation, have the skills to lead training programs, but maybe they don't have the knowledge base of the program that we're going to be teaching, right? So a train the trainer for this audience is going to be geared towards getting them the knowledge to be able to go and teach this material, to lead this material, right? The second audience may be the subject matter experts, right? This is going to be people who have the knowledge base of the material going to be covered in our training program, right? The overall training program, not the train the trainer program. But so these subject matter experts have the knowledge, but they probably don't have the skills or, the ability to lead a successful program, and are train the trainers to help them get towards that place, so they can take their knowledge and then successfully lead a training program about it. So they both, in both these cases, we're training the trainer, but in one way, we're looking at building knowledge in an area to people who have experience in training, and the other, we're trying to give skills and abilities to people who have the knowledge of our upcoming training program on how to successfully train people to do that program. We're going to look at it a lot more towards the experienced trainer in this today. Same process will apply, but kind of, what you're looking at or how you're going to go about it's going to look a little differently. But I think, because we're kind of talking to the L&D community today, we're going to talk more geared towards, we have experienced trainers, but how do we get them up and ready for that successful program? All right, so let's just dive right into the process. And instead of popping things up on the screen, I figured I'm just going to lay them all out there, high-level points on it, and we're going to walk ourselves through this. All right. So for me, it's a very iterative step-by-step process, because I can't say iterative today. But what we're going to do, and I'm going to try to use some terminology like the first one you see there, right? Master trainer-led session. So when I use the term master trainer, what I'm talking about is the facilitator of the Train the Trainer program, right? Because in this example, our participants of the Train the Trainer program are facilitators, who are then going to be facilitators for the participants of the actual program. So terminology gets a little weird. So instead of going that route, I wanted to kind of say, all right, we have the master trainer who is leading the participants, which are the facilitators, right? So we're looking at the high-level course before the actual course we're teaching. All right, so the master trainer, they're going to lead, A to Z, soup to nuts, whatever you want to think. They're going to walk you, they're going to lead the facilitators all the way through the actual course, right? So if it's a 2-day course, guess what? That first master-led session, it's a 2-day course, right? They're going through that whole process. During that process, the participants, who are our facilitators, they want to be familiarizing themselves with all the training material. So at their desk, they have their facilitator guide open. They have the participant guide open. If there's job aids, case studies, handouts, all of that stuff is there, right? So, they may have a whole swath of information right in front of them. But this is the idea, is we're trying to get them, one, to see the course in action, see all the materials, and they can then, make their notes as they go along, right? So they're getting their information ready. They should be taking notes. And if you're doing this and someone's not making notes, that's a huge red flag. Like, that, I would actually pull that person aside and be like, why aren't you taking notes, right? If you think they're going to retain all of this information, they're not. Like, they need to be making notes because, well, one, because we're trying to get them the knowledge to get into, to be able to teach this material successfully or to lead this training successfully. But for the next point, and again, I'm pointing, but this way at least I'm doing it the right way. After our master-led session, we're doing a debrief, right? And in this is the place where all the participants who are soon to be facilitators get to sit down, ask the master trainer, why did you do this? What happens if I went this way? And kind of they're able to ask and get their questions answered about the whole process, right? Why did we go this route? What happens if I did this instead, right? So there's the give and take. So they see what, it's basically, it was modeled for them. They take notes, and then we talk about it. And then that third step in it is now we open up the floor and we ask, who's ready to do a co-led session, right? and one of the things to think about, and it's one of the items we're going to talk about and things to consider is, what's the size of our audience for a Train the Trainer program, right? How we break this up, how is it if it's 2 people going through the program is different than if it's 20 people in this program, right? So that's something to keep in mind. But basically, after the master trainer does the whole set, goes through the whole thing with you, we debrief. Now we're going to do co-led training, and we're running through the program again. And what I would do is I would pick the pieces you want people to do. I try not to let them pick, or if it's they pick one, I pick 2 for them, those type of things, because we want, and especially we want to be able, be kind of pushing the boundaries of people, right? Getting them past some places where they may normally, stop themselves. But in those co-led sessions, things you may want to look out for, once we get going, be ready to step in, right? We don't want to be cutting anybody down, but let's say they're going, they're leading the session, and we're going to use customer service because that's kind of my go-to example. But if we go through and they start, and we're talking about email etiquette, and they get points 1 and 2, but forget to cover points 3 and 4. Like, this is where you step in and to add to Sue's great points, also consider, choice, also consider C and D, right? So we're supporting what they're doing, but adding in so that the people who are in the training are still getting all that they need, right? So it's another thing to consider, and I'm kind of jumping the gun on this one, but when we're doing these co-led sessions, right, the co-led session could be with live participants, right? People who are going to put this into place in the workforce, right? So the actual people who would be getting the training later on from facilitators are getting it during this process. Could be that. It also could be that we are running these sessions back to the other participants of the Train the Trainer program. So that's a piece that you're going to have to figure out on your own. Who's the audience for these co-led sessions? But you want to make sure, especially if you're going to specifically to people who are going to be employing this the actual training in the workforce, that we're making sure that we're covering everything that needs to be covered in that program. And even if you're doing it to the Train the Trainer audience, you want to make sure that we're modeling all the right things that they're supposed to be doing anyways. But so we go through the co-led session, and guess what? After that, we're back to another debrief, right? And we're now gonna basically this is where they can ask and answer questions as well, as now the master trainer can come in and say, hey, at this point, why did you go this route instead of this route? And we can start getting the discussion and discourse going back and forth that way as well. So we've gone through master trainer leading it, debrief, co-led, debrief, and now the third level of this is for the participant themselves to run the whole thing by themselves. They're going to do it, again, soup to nuts through the whole thing. Again, audience could be the Train the Trainer, it could be managers, it could be, the actual participants who are going to be going through the different trainings, like, the different waves of training. It could be one of those. It's something you're going to have to consider. But now they're going to go through this whole course, and it's going to be audited by the master trainer, right? So they're sitting in the back, they're making notes, right? They're in this time, they're keeping track of time, all of these things. All of this is happening, run through the whole course, and we end with a final debrief and go through this whole process again, right? The ask and answer questions, go over what worked, what didn't work, all of those things, right? It's that repetition. It's practice, right? Take 10,000 hours, right, to become skillful, but it's 10,000 hours with feedback. So we're going to do it, we're going to then have the debriefs. And this is that whole process. The more you do it, the more they get comfortable with it, the more, we can start making some corrections, and this will get people comfortable and ready to run this program. So, it's not rocket science, right? It's just train the trainer. But that's the idea, is we want to go through this whole thing. This process, it's really not ideal for large groups. It's not. But sometimes it's all you have is a large group. So what can we do in that situation? We have the ability that we could go, instead of breaking up, instead of in those co-led pieces, or even in the participant-led, break it up and say, like, all right, Jim, you're doing lessons 1 and 2, and Sue, you've got 3, 4, and 5, and Bob, you've got 7, 8, and 9, and break it up. And if you go that route, let's say you break it up for the co-led, when you do the participant-led, rotate that material. So Jim's not doing the same stuff that he did in co-led during the participant-led, and so on, so that people are exposed to different things, right? It's the same ideal as role play, but it's live, and right, you get to see the dog there, who's super excited about. The dog loves Train the Trainer. All right, so the one thing to think about are time frames. Like, how long should this take, right? This whole process. The way I look at it is, take the length of your course that you're training the trainer to teach and multiply it by 2.5. So if it's a day-long course, it's going to probably take 2.5 days, right? If it's, a 3-hour course, figure what's struggling today, folks. I'll do 4 because I can do that easier. 10 hours. But that's the idea, is go through, generally figure 2.5 times the length of the course, right? Especially that first time we're running it through, we're going all the way through the material. We're covering everything in that master trainer session. So, because we want the facilitators, the soon-to-be facilitators, to be completely comfortable with all the material. So that's general rule of thumb, 2.5 times the length of your course. All right. So what do we want to things we want to consider during this, right? Again, just make it easier. Just going to kind of put up the high-level things. So time frame, we just talked about. Next thing to kind of consider is, what are we actually assessing, right? Like, what type of training is it? Are we looking, or what's the audience? Are we looking to assess their skills at facilitation? Are we looking to assess their knowledge in a general area? In both of these, and especially, I almost feel more so in the knowledge side, you may have to tread lightly, right? Like, how do you, in one way, these are our peers, when we're leading these, or soon to be peers. So you just want to be cognizant of how we bring stuff up. Just like when we go, if we have to, add in additional information that someone left off in, let's say, that co-led session, when we say, to that great point that Pat made, let me add these couple things in, right? We're not cutting that person down, we're just supplementing it. So when we're assessing, especially the knowledge side of it, I always feel you just have to pick and choose your words carefully. Speaking of assessments, or assessing, in your course, if you have assessments, right? If you're running someone through, the Hersey Blanchard situational leadership, or Myers-Briggs, or the DISC methodology, whatever assessment you're doing, you need to put the people, the facilitators of, the soon-to-be facilitators, you need to have them take the assessments. You can't say just look up information about Myers-Briggs. That's not going to be successful. Put them through the assessment that the participants are going to be put through in that course. And the reason of this, twofold. One, we want the facilitators to experience the whole course as if they were, as the participant. We want them to be able to talk about that assessment, right? Someone's taking an assessment during a course. It is quite possible someone's hands goes up, right? Hey, Mr. Facilitator, Mrs. Facilitator, I've got a question, right? And you need to be able to handle that. And if you haven't gone through the assessment, or it's been, 3 years since you've gone through an assessment, you may not remember. So run through the assessment. In that debrief process, right? So probably, let me pop back over here, right? So they're going to run, more than likely, they're going to run through those assessments at the master trainer led portion, the first time we do it. So in that after session debrief, that first debrief, that's where we're going to go in and we're going to actually we'll debrief the assessment during that process. Talk about what they saw, what they got on their item. Because if you're running someone through an assessment in a training program, people need to, the participants need to know what it is, so we want our facilitators to be able to handle that. I would also provide have some other examples of different scorings, right? So, we're not just going to debrief one person's Myers-Briggs. We'll have, theirs and 3 other versions, because participants in the overall program are going to have different things, so we need to be able to talk to it. I see something came in. Megan, I agree about being tactful in how you add additional details or help to prompt the new trainer, adding value using emotional intelligence. Does this have to be said? Does this have to be said by me? Does this have to be said by me now? I feel like that a lot. But yeah, I figure it doesn't hurt to say it, right? Like, treat people nicely. But sometimes people don't, so it doesn't hurt to say it. But I agree. It really shouldn't have to be said, but we should probably still say it, right? All right, but that's the idea. With the assessments, we want to run people through those. All right, next one, auditing time, right, or auditing. When that master trainer goes through an audit, is auditing that final run through, and even during some of those co-led ones, keep track of time, right? During this whole process, and I probably should have, and I can't remember at the moment. This whole train the trainer process, we're going to step back a moment in case I didn't. The train the trainer program happens after we've gone through the design, the development process of building out our program, and we've also piloted, right? So we've built it, we've designed it, we built it, we piloted it, we know it works, we have all our timing, we have it exactly the way we want it, right? We've gone through some iterations of it. See, now I can say that word. But we've gone through that, and now we're trying to, spread it out to the world. So when it comes time and we're getting our facilitators ready to do this, and we're going through the co-led and the participant-led sessions of this, we want to audit them, right? We're keeping track of notes of, you went astray here, we went astray there, but keep track of time, right? A lot of time, the developers spend a lot of time figuring out timing, right? So things fit where they need to, and we don't get burdened down. But we all know role plays, activities, stories. These are the places we get off track, we get off base. So we want to keep the soon-to-be facilitators' feet to the fire on this. So if it was supposed to take 15 minutes and it took 20 minutes, we got to let them know, and then point out where they could have shaved some time. You kind of expounded a little bit too much in that story. I see where you're going with the story, but we need to condense that down. All right, the next one size doesn't fit all. And what do I mean by that is not every training's the same, right? Sometimes we're building out soft skills, right? Or maybe it's technical skills, or it's prerequisite training, right? Or are we looking to build knowledge? Are we looking to build skills? So every program, this process works, but how we go about it, the little intricacies, you're going to have to figure out kind of on a train the trainer by train the trainer basis, right? We need to make sure that we're gearing a train the trainer for the specific audience, for the specific material that we're covering, right? How we go about talking about, customer service with experienced trainers versus subject matter experts, it's a different conversation that's still leading us down to a successful training program. Let's see. I have a coworker who has the candidate teach to the teddy bears, dry run with no live audience, but active as a live audience. I think it's great, practice. I think that's great. The teddy bears don't give feedback though, right? Like, I'm not saying, you'll notice I'm a child of the 80s, like, well, if you had a Teddy Ruxpin and you had the cassette player in the back and it would talk to you, even that's not going to help. I think the feedback portion is paramount, right? I would say, that practice of the teddy bears is great, and that, if we were to jump back to this process, after that participant-led session, we do the debrief, and now they're on their own getting ready to do it, and they're practicing on their own. That's where the practice the teddy bears would fit. But, everyone's going to do it their own way. I think it's paramount to have that feedback portion of it. All right. Lastly, train the trainer in the virtual world, right? How do we handle this? And for me, it's really not that different. Other than you probably have at least a minimum of one other person attending. For each, you would have your facilitator and you have a producer. Ideally, you should not be facilitating and producing at the same time. I know budgetary manpower sometimes dictates that, but in an ideal world, facilitator and producer, each knowing their roles and each being cross-trained in the other roles, right? Your producer really, I look at as your backup facilitator, right? Something technical happens, someone loses internet, something like that. You have somebody else who can pick up the ball and go with it. But, so you would have your facilitator and your producer and your train the trainer. You need to simulate all aspects of the training. I probably shouldn't have to say this, but I thought it was important enough to do so that, if we're running breakout rooms, great. We do breakout rooms in our train the trainer, right? If you're asking people to put stuff into polls, great. Put stuff out, or into chats or we're creating word clouds, all of that, do it, right? If I could, I would actually run the virtual train the trainer with everybody in the room, but having them logged into their system. So, I would be teaching it or talking into my system or something like that. They're seeing it on the camera, but we're all still live and we could do it. Now, is it possible? Probably not. But if you could, I think that would be a lot more powerful, because we could kind of, close down the laptop screen, talk a little bit, go back and go into it. But you definitely want to run it through the system that you're going to be doing it in. But having someone physically there that can then come over and help when something goes off is key, or would be very, very powerful. And the last one, and this one doesn't necessarily tie to just train the trainer for virtual, but whoever is leading, whoever that master trainer is, they need to have access to all aspects of the training. Sometimes that train the trainers from outside the organization, right? You're doing breakout rooms. You want them to sit through those breakout rooms, be able to pop back and forth into those breakout room sessions. You want them to be able to get to all aspects of where your training could be happening, so they can observe, they can report, they can demonstrate. So make sure your master trainer has access to all aspects of the way we're going about training. So that is, and I was just looking through here, Steve came in, agreed timing is key, love the emoji, thank you Steve. and also that feedback is vital. I think feedback in all aspects of life, feedback is vital. But that being said, that's the main portion of what I wanted to talk about in regards to train the trainer today. Kind of circling back, right? How do we define it? For me, it's our model, our framework of training facilitators or subject matter experts to be ready to lead a successful program in whatever that area may be. Our audience could be experienced trainers or subject matter experts, and we're kind of going about it in different ways. Experienced facilitators, it's more about getting them the knowledge to teach that subject or to lead that subject. Subject matter experts is about getting them the skills so that they can lead the subject that they know. Process, right? Really, that iterative process that we're going to show them how to do it. We're then going to talk about it. We're going to let them do it with us. We're going to talk about it. They're going to do it. I'm going to watch, and then we're going to talk about it. And then we can now talk to the teddy bears. And then lastly, things to keep in mind, right? Figure 2.5 times the length of your course. Keep in mind what you're assessing in your audits. We're making notes on what's working, what's not working. Keep track of time. One size doesn't fit all. And, have your facilitators and producers in your training. So that's, my friends, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. I want to see, were there any other questions? Here we go with Megan. The trainer needs to be able to balance leading the class and gathering results from the forums, quizzes, interactive items. When you mentioned having a producer, are those the items you would classify in the role? They could be. I think if you go and you're doing virtual and you have the ability to have 2 people, you want to define their roles. What is person A completely responsible for? What's person B? What's a facilitator? What is 100% theirs? What's 100% the producers? What is, where's that gray area? What do they both kind of cover? For me, like interactive items, putting stuff up into chats, loading up word clouds, all those type of things, that would be, for me, producer type items. Gathering results or being able to review the polls and push them up on the screen, to me, could be both. But I think that comes down to knowing what our tool is, what are we trying to achieve, and then just kind of laying out the groundwork. And this would be something we would cover in the Train the Trainer, of who's doing what and when, until things go wrong, and now everyone needs, again, I'm very big on cross-training my facilitators and my producers, because too often technology fails someone at a key moment, and if you have someone who can pick up that ball and run with it. But in general, I think gathering results, interactive items, asking people to turn on the cameras, turn them off, that falls into the realm of the producer. Takeaways. I don't see any other questions. Jeff, you're welcome. Who else came in? Cheryl, thank you again for coming. And who's the other one? Steve, thank you for the session and best. Thank you. Yeah, I don't think I'm too bad in it. It's more, I feel like I have a really, really bad head cold, but thank you. As with all times, any help you guys need, there's my email, there's my phone number. Please reach out. Any way I can help you with this information or anything, let me know. And if you find these helpful, anything like that, if you could, I'd love it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Basically, I want to get to 100 subscribers, because then I can put it under my name and not some weird series of numbers and letters. That would be wonderful. But again, I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I'm 4 minutes over my goal of 30 minutes, so I apologize, but I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the warm weather, and I will see you guys next week. All right? Oh, next week, one I'm super excited about. We're going to talk about the like the tools, some of the software that I use to do my virtual type stuff, right? So it's just like complete nerdery. So be excited for that one. So that's, next Friday at noon, my favorite tools for virtual. All right. I'll see you guys soon. Take care.